Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone's having a great Tuesday that feels like a Monday since we're coming back from the Labor Day holidays. I sometimes try to remember, oh yeah, it's Tuesday. I've got to do all my Tuesday stuff today. But fortunately, I didn't forget that I was going to be joined by Meghan today. So I really appreciate you taking the time to jump on the podcast with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Meghan is the editor-in-chief of MyPointTV, which is a local, I shouldn't even say local because you guys might do stuff outside of Austin as well too, but kind of a over the internet news broadcast system. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that, kind of explain a little bit about MyPointTV.
Yeah, so MyPointTV is a user-generated content online storytelling platform. We really want to have the community, the people in the community, the people that represent their community, and others to contribute stories that they care about and issues that they're passionate about. A lot of times, you watch the news and the news kind of tells you what's important, and it may not be that important to you. So this gives people the opportunity to speak their mind and tell the stories that they want to tell and that they think should be basically in the news.
Very cool. So give us a little background on you specifically. I always kind of like to get what I call your origin story. Obviously, a lot of people who currently live in Austin aren't native to Austin. So where did you kind of grow up, and if you haven't been in Austin your whole life, what kind of brought you here?
Yeah, so I actually grew up in Houston. It's a lot different than it was when I grew up there, but it was a really great place to grow up, big city, and always kind of knew that I wanted to do something TV. I actually wanted to be Oprah. I mean, who doesn't as a kid? That was definitely my passion and I used to, do my own little newscasts with my friends that I would write and script and set up, in my house, little news anchor desks and just tell the news to, I don't know, probably my parents who got hours of this. And then, when I got older in high school, my high school had a really great journalism program and kind of did a little bit of everything, producing, writing, editing. Back then we had the edit to tape where this kind of ages me a little bit, but it wasn't as easy as it is now. And we kind of, had to stop and rewind and, so definitely old school editing I learned. And then decided, this is what I want to do is just be in the news, and went to Sam Houston State was my first, where I started, I guess, my education. They have a really great program there. And then tried out to be an anchor and completely bombed it. It was awful. It was very embarrassing actually, but I had a professor that said, hey, have you ever tried producing? And I was like, well, I don't really know much about that. And he just sat me down with some of the other producers, and I saw them putting the shows together and writing them and deciding, the order of how the news was going to play out and writing everything that the anchor said. And I was like, wow, okay, this is what I want to do. This is cool. I have the opportunity to shape shows actually. And so he really introduced me to what it is to be a producer. And, I was really fascinated by I felt like a boss, I guess, to be like the boss part of it. And not just the talking head.
Yeah, you're like, oh, these people on the air, they're just doing what I tell them to do. I'm working them like married puppets.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I was, I thought that was just the coolest thing. So started doing that, ended up going to Oklahoma State to finish off my broadcasting education, and did a lot of cool things there. And just always knew I wanted to just keep being a producer. Actually graduated and moved to Orange County after that, just picked up and moved, thought it was a cool place to live. Couldn't get a job there right away. So I actually sold office supplies door to door, which was not the easiest, but it was definitely fun. And I learned a lot in sales and how to, just talk to people. And then I ended up getting an associate producer job on a morning show out there. It's called Daybreak OC. And I started as associate producer and then ended up being the live segment producer, where I got to bring in live guests and write that whole segment. Also worked on a few other shows there. Really enjoyed working there. It was a really great experience. And then just one day they were like, "Great job, you guys. Everybody's fired." Like, we're ending the show. So, oh, that was tough. But ended up getting it.
How long ago was that?
Oh man, this must have been this was definitely during the recession. So it might have been like
Okay.
2009-ish, something like that, 2008. Yeah, so they completely shut down that show. It was pretty devastating because I got to do some really cool things. And then, got another producer gig at a health show that was just, I think, just broadcasted in health, like doctor's offices and stuff like that. And then a couple months later, the same thing happened. They shut it down. So I was unemployed for a little bit, but it worked out because I found out I was pregnant with my youngest daughter and was like, man, I got to get out of California. This keeps happening. Nobody can keep a job around here. And knew I wanted to come back to Texas. The economy was a little bit better out here. I missed all my friends and family. And, growing up in Houston, we always went to Austin to have a good time. So I was like, okay, I think that's where I want to go, is Austin. So we just, picked up and moved to Austin. And I was a stay-at-home mom for about 6 years, and then applied for associate producer job at Spectrum News, and wasn't Spectrum then, it was Time Warner Cable News. They've gone through a few new name changes since I've been there. And they just kind of took a chance on me, really. My bosses took a chance on me because it had been a while since I'd been in the news industry, but they let me do it. And I just moved up from associate producer to a couple years after that, producer, and then executive producer, and left there as the managing editor. And, I saw the news was changing. Spectrum's a cable network, and I really don't know anybody that has cable, and they do a really great job. They see that, and they've, done a really great job with the app and stuff. But I knew that there's a lot of people that just don't turn on the TV anymore to watch the news. And so when I found MyPoint, I was really excited about the future, I guess. And it seems like they get it, and where the future of news is going. And so I just knew, I'd been at Spectrum for 6 years, and I just needed a change and a challenge. And, joining a startup is definitely a change and a challenge. And, I'm doing all kinds of things, I'm not really producing anymore, but I'm, learning marketing and PR and all those cool things that are just, things I've never done before. So it's definitely a challenge, and it's definitely been fun.
Yeah, I know for me with my job, it's one of the things I enjoy is the fact that no 2 days are the same, right? And so like having to learn new stuff and figure out new things adds to the joy, even though there is challenges with that for sure.
Absolutely.
It's funny you mentioned like the video editing side of things. I never did anything like that really in high school or really college, because again, I was old enough where that you never had to really do that, but had some friends that had a few classes that got into that a little bit. And like you mentioned, having to go in and put in videotapes and actually cut up tapes and stuff. And it was to think of doing that now when it's literally go on your phone and just kind of, put two videos together and, do a transition, and no big deal. It's all.
Oh man, it's so much nicer now. My daughter's actually an editor, and she uses like Final Cut and stuff. And I tell her, I think she can't even fathom, like, first off, what are tapes? Or she has no idea.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's also really cool to hear that you basically are doing something you've been passionate about since you were a kid. I feel like there's a lot of people that. I was out when I was a kid. I never thought I was going to be a real estate agent necessarily, but there's so few people who have a passion when they're young that get to kind of follow through on that. So that's a really cool aspect.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely, I knew in my career that I had to do something that I enjoyed, or I wouldn't I wouldn't be able to stick to it and work hard. But yeah, it's definitely been something that I've really enjoyed and man, I've gotten to do some really cool things with it. So it's been fun.
It definitely makes things easier when times are tough, right? So getting let go of a job, or not be able to have a job for a while, it's easier to kind of keep moving forward when it is something that you truly do love versus when it's just a job.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What you mentioned that when you were, so it sounds like you were pretty young, because you mentioned about not getting the anchor job or the talent job. Was it how, like, what, were you still in college at that point in time, or just after college, or?
Yeah, that was in college. That was actually my first semester in college, and they had like I think a weekly or daily newscast that they put on for the school
Okay.
and tried out for the anchor job. I was the anchor jobs were for probably like the seniors
Sure.
and stuff, and I was a freshman. Like, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to come in here and get this anchor job, and just completely crashed it. It was
Well, I was gonna say, so at that young of an age, was it something where like when you tried it, you just realized, not obviously you didn't do well at it, but was when you tried it, you realized it wasn't something that you truly loved that way? Or you just, again, most of us are not great at the first time that we try something, as much as, as much as doing news reports in your parents' living room to your parents gave you some level of practice. I would imagine that very few people probably get the first, anchor job or reporter job that they apply for that way. So was it something where you just immediately made, you knew you wanted to immediately make that switch, or because of like your professors and stuff showing you these other options that kind of turned that on to you?
Well, as soon as I learned what a producer does, I was hooked. That was what I then knew that was what I wanted to do. I was like, forget being Oprah. I'm gonna write for Oprah. I guess, like, I'm gonna tell her what to say, and realize that like they shaped the show, and that was just so much more interesting to me than showing up. Anchors do a lot now.
Sure.
A lot of them produce and different things and write and stuff like that. But the shaping of the show and deciding what is in the show and what's important was just so fascinating to me. And I got in there and started doing it, and then really was like, wow, this is what I want to do. This is really great. And I really enjoy writing. And I definitely got to do a lot more of that as a producer.
Yeah, versus reading the teleprompter as an anchor.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. And then I knew I didn't want to be a reporter, because I just that's the toughest job out there, man. Just,
Yeah.
you know,
Pounding,
getting
yeah, pounding the pavement and having to kind of do, all that legwork for 30 seconds of airtime.
absolutely. And I work with contributors now for MyPoint, and they're always just like, it's so hard getting somebody to agree to do an interview with me, or their time doesn't work, whatever, or they don't want to talk to me. And I'm like, I know it's really difficult. That's definitely why I don't do what you do. Like, it's not easy.
Yeah. No, a lot of things that people do, right? So as a realtor, a lot of people think, oh, that's so easy. You just, help someone find a house and put an offer on, right? So there are many jobs where people only see that front facing, customer facing aspect of it and are like, oh yeah, I can kind of talk to a camera. So no big deal. I just got to hold a mic now instead of having my earbuds in. Like, that would be super easy. But there's a reason that it's not, and there's a reason that it takes a long time for people to kind of break through, is that there is some talent and hard work and a lot of other things that go into being successful.
Absolutely. And also just the thought of, having to have people talk to you at possibly their most vulnerable moment, when they may have lost a child or something. I was just like, that would be so difficult to just be like, here, put a mic in their face. And so I was like, I'll leave that to the professionals.
Yeah. No, yeah, there's some of those, there are certain journalists who, again, they're amazing, but I wouldn't want that type of job, period like to have to kind of get into those kind of situations. And again, it's important that there are people who do like to do that. It's kind of like doctors and nurses. I have no desire to do that. I'm really glad that there are people who love to do that.
Yep.
Because we need it, but it's not my cup of tea for sure.
Yeah, and I love working with contributors and reporters. I mean, guiding them on shaping their story and stuff. But yeah, they're the ones that actually get out there and do that groundwork, and it's tough.
So obviously, having been in the industry for a while, you've kind of seen the changes that it's gone through, both technology-wise and consumption-wise. When at Spectrum, about how long ago at Spectrum were you kind of like really starting to see that shift in the way that people consumed news and information?
I think we all kind of saw it a while ago. It's been a while. Just talking to my friends and stuff, like asking them where they get their news. I thought my parents' generation was the generation that's still, and they still are for the most part, turning on local news at like 5 o'clock or 10 o'clock. But just recently, my parents were like, I don't even turn on the news. I get all my news online. And I was like, wow. So who is turning on the news, So that's definitely where the industry is going, is online, with apps and newsletters and, posts on Facebook. And, but with that, you have to be careful too. You want to make sure that you're actually getting news and not, I guess, fake news on social media. So that's also a tough thing. But I mean, yes, the industry is definitely changing. There's a lot of people that just aren't following, the local news and sitting down with their families at 5 o'clock. They have too much access to it just in their hand. And so I think I know that definitely news is seeing that, and a lot of the stations are adjusting better than others. Spectrum has a great app, where you can get all of your stuff. And then, MyPoint, of course, is completely online. So that's definitely where it's going.
For organizations like MyPoint, how do you balance, again, the using local people for news stories with not that they don't necessarily have integrity, right? But like if you had a news organization, you have certain things that different types of stories have to be vetted in different ways. How are those kind of things handled for a company like MyPoint?
So every story that is submitted and uploaded from a contributor is reviewed by our content team. So they're checking things like making sure the video edits are correct, checking facts, and just making sure that the story makes sense, that it's good quality. So every story does go through an approval process. And then once it's approved, then that's when it will go on the site.
Interesting. And do they have editorial control as well too, or that's one of the big things that most people complain about for different news organizations is that organizations, whatever it may be, the right or the left, that they're kind of have that viewpoint that they tend to push versus it being truly agnostic in just getting out information these days. And so do you guys accept all kinds of stories from all different viewpoints and stuff that way? Or do you guys or is there some stuff, I'm sure, again, not truly fringe, but how do you guys balance, I guess, that portion of it as well?
Yeah, so we want contributors. We have contributors from all types of walks of life and viewpoints. And so we don't control, I guess, their scripts or what they write. But we would, if they were to put like a fact, like 90% of whatever, we would definitely check that. Or if they're, citing a law or something like that, we want to make sure that those facts are correct. But their point of views are welcome. Something really cool that we have on the app. So a lot of news organizations will balance, you'll hear a lot. You got to get both sides. You got to get both sides, just to balance that out. But for MyPoint, we want people to give their opinion, give the story as they see it, but we also have a response on the website where people have to submit videos where they can respond and give more information, give their point of view, say that they don't agree with the video or the point of view, or just have like a neutral response. And that eliminates, the people that hide behind the comment section and can just, say whatever they want and not be seen. We ask people to submit their videos to respond to our stories. And those, again, are also vetted and looked at by our editorial team before they're posted. Just
Very
make sure
interesting.
there's no profanity or
Sure.
incorrect information or anything like that.
Unfortunately, I think we've all been to the comment section of some online thing and have seen what that can devolve into. So completely understandable that you're wanting to try to eliminate some of that, right? Like, again, you can have your opinion and you can state your facts as long as they are facts, or they're your opinion in a civilized manner.
Absolutely. And it opens up the dialogue. It opens up the conversation for people. So if we had, say a real estate story about how Austin is, the ones you see every day, Austin's like the most popular place to move. And, we say something that sounds crazy to you as a realtor, you can get on there and submit a video and say, maybe that's not correct, or maybe you should, look into this or something like that. So it definitely opens up the conversation, and then the contributor could also respond back to you. So that was kind of the whole point of MyPoint, is to get people talking face to face almost as much as you can, and to see other people's point of views, and not just one-sided news where you
Sure.
don't get to interact and you don't get to say, hey, I feel like that was not correct. Working the news, we'd get those phone calls all the time, like, why are you telling the story this way? And, sometimes they were legitimate comments, but most of the time we were like, oh, that crazy person, whatever, is calling again or something. Now people actually can have their voice heard and respond as long as they're nice and not, going on rants or screaming, profanity or anything. But yeah, it gives them an opportunity to actually respond and get their voice out there.
Nice. Yeah, no, and like you were saying too, the one of the great things with technology has been that we can feel connected to people all over the United States, all over Texas. Again, as the pandemic was here, you could still video chat with people. The one somewhat of a downside is then we can get very insular into hearing just the things we want to hear and the people that we want to hear them from. And so not that that's in and of itself bad, but by not at least hearing other viewpoints of things, you can never really challenge and in a lot of cases confirm your beliefs, right? Like, hearing another
Right.
point of view might help you actually confirm, no, I'm right and this is why. But if you're only listening to your own echo chamber, you can't even really solidify why you believe what you believe in a lot of cases. So having those multiple points of views is critical.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's something you really don't get too much just watching the news. I mean, we may interview, you may interview the both sides, but the both sides might not be what the people feel.
Sure.
And you see that there's a lot of frustration with news right now because of that. They feel like the news is so one-sided. There's so many times we've wanted to interview certain people and they're like, oh, we don't trust the news or something, So MyPoint's trying to be the news that gets your point out there, and is available for you to put your opinion, your point of view, obviously, and your side of the story out there.
So how long has MyPoint been around for?
So it's been a little over a year, and it's a startup, and we chose Austin to start it, just because Austin is such a cool tech-friendly city. Startup isn't really like a scary word here. People are encouraged by that, want to help, want to build startups up and want to see them succeed. There's also a lot of cool news that goes on here, but nothing too crazy, nothing like Houston or Dallas. So it's definitely a good mix of good news, not so good news, bad news. So it just seemed to be a really good place to start.
Nice. No, and kind of going back to like you mentioned about the opposing view kind of stuff. Unfortunately, a lot of what gets categorized as news these days is about two sometimes super opposing people yelling at each other, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's like that's great, but most of us don't feel either one of those two ways to those extremes. And so, and again, I think that obviously Austin has every place has its extremes in certain areas, but the amount of diversity and stuff here, I think, does kind of being obviously a more liberal city in a conservative state has an interesting mix of viewpoints, I'm sure, and kind of people that see things differently that way.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, Austin definitely has a good mix. Sometimes it depends on the neighborhood you're in. Sometimes, but yeah, they definitely have a good mix of views, and you can get all kinds of opinions here in Austin.
Yeah, and it's one of those, especially in most big cities. While you're right, it's from a electoral standpoint. While most big cities tend to lean Democrat or left, when you're talking about a city that has over 1 million people, that still leaves a lot of people who are on the other side of the spectrum. If you're talking a political spectrum, right, or whatever of those categories. So it's even though they may not, even though there are definitely the minority in a lot of different categories, that's still a really large percentage of, or a large number of the population in larger cities, which again gives them a chance to have more contributors to a program like this.
Yes, absolutely. And, Austin's also a really creative city. We have, I mean, just starting with MyPoint and hiring freelancers and, different contributors that reach out to us. There's a lot of talented people here. There's a lot of people who are really great with video and editing and just photography. And, I was really surprised that there's some really talented people. And it's made my job a little bit easier finding those people and having them turn out really great content, beautifully shot and edited. And so it's definitely the right choice.
Yeah, I mean, I think things like the South by Southwest Film Festival, and like I say, just obviously having the music side of it, I think tends to breed some of that creativity in other areas as well too. Again, like you had mentioned, people of a certain age, like your kids and stuff, they've just kind of grown up with the fact that, oh yeah, we just shoot stuff on video and edit it. And so it's for a large segment of the younger population, it's just kind of something that they have grown up with the same way we grew up with. Oh, I have a computer that I can type my paper on instead of having using a typewriter for my assignment. And so it definitely makes it easier to find those people. But I do think Austin, in its creativity and in its kind of uniqueness, is probably ahead of the curve from a lot of other cities.
Absolutely, you're totally right. And a lot of our contributors shoot on their iPhones, and they've been probably shooting video and editing on their phone for since they were younger. And so it was just a natural thing for them to just start shooting stories and putting them together and adding video. And so yeah, definitely technology has definitely helped our industry a lot with just having really great cameras on our phones that actually pick up pretty good audio as well.
Yeah, like you mentioned, it does. I mean, obviously almost anyone can start a website, but like you mentioned, it seems like for MyPoint, like really having that review board, have a kind of a centralized review board, having the platform to both put up all of the information and videos and stuff that people provide, as well as promote it to a wider audience, right? That's always hard for an individual to do, where a company can do that a little bit easier. Seems like the components that are still critical in a news company. Whereas, again, right? Like having the $10,000 camera isn't as important because we all have a couple $100, maybe $1,000 camera in our pocket most of the time. Same thing with like the editing software too, right? Like it's stuff that is much easier to come by than it was 5 and definitely 10 years ago.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just going back to when I was editing tape to tape, like now literally you can just pick videos and drop them into iMovie and it gives you transitions and everything. And there you go. There's your story. You just add a track to it, put in some sound bites. So it definitely makes it a lot easier. And that also opens up for contributors to not just be people who have done this their whole life and that are, videographers. It opens it up to everyday people that can just learn to, shoot with their phone and put it down on a track in iMovie, and it just pretty much edits it for you.
Nice. So most of the people that contribute, they're editing their spot themselves versus sending stuff into you guys to edit?
Yes, they do edit themselves, and then if there's like small minor edit changes that it's just not worth reaching out to them for. Well, we have an editor that can change some things up. He also will edit for our social media things. But yes, most our contributors definitely shoot, edit, write their own stories.
Very nice. So, what is the plan for MyPoint kind of going forward? I mean, obviously, as a startup, growth is usually the kind of number one thing that you guys are looking to do, but kind of what's the plan to make that happen?
So we definitely want to expand into other cities. Right now, we're focusing on our contributors and getting, quality contributors and quality stories out there. And brand awareness is huge for a startup. So we're trying to get our name out there as much as possible. That's why this is a great opportunity. I thank you again for having me on to just let people know what we're doing. So definitely increasing our contributors and stories, and eventually we hope to move this on to other cities.
Very nice. So, in that vein, for people who maybe either one are hoping to contribute or are like, "Hey, this is a potential option for consuming some news that I wasn't aware of," what are the kind of best ways to find those things out?
So definitely our website is where you can find all the stories that we have. You can follow us on all the social media. You just type in MyPointTV and it'll come up. As far as being a contributor, they can email me, or you can go to our site and there's a little button at the top that says become a contributor. And all you have to do is sign up, and then somebody will contact you and we'll get things started. You just tell us your story ideas. We also have some story ideas that our content team puts together that we would like to see, but that's just if people don't have an idea of what they want, and they can go in there and pick a story that's already approved, or they can just pitch their own stories, and then we go from there.
Very cool. So for you, like you mentioned the email, so we got that down here, the Meghan.Gonzalez at MyPoint.tv. On the socials, is it MyPointTV or MyPoint.tv?
MyPoint.tv, but I'm pretty sure if you just start typing
You'll
MyPoint,
probably find both.
it'll probably come up. Yes.
The programs are pretty smart these days
Yes.
to understand that stuff. What are kind of the other best ways for people to kind of follow you and see what you're doing with the program and with the TV show as well?
Definitely my Twitter, and probably Twitter is where I would post most of the stuff for me. Maybe Facebook for a lot of things as well. But the best way to see what we've got going on is definitely our socials and our website. We are about to launch a new website, which we're really excited about. It's going to be a lot more user friendly and pretty. And I just saw some of the makings of it today. So it's going to look really cool. So stick around. That should be coming soon. And you'll definitely notice a difference when it launches.
Nice. Yeah, I mean that's the only downside with technology is it's changing so fast that you have to make sure and keep up with it. Otherwise, you can start to feel outdated very quickly.
Yes, yeah, and this one will definitely have more. I guess it'll get our contributors a little bit more out there. We'll be able to promote our contributors, and people will be able to contact them. And some of them have other social pages that they, maybe like a YouTube. We might have like a YouTuber or a social media influencer. So it definitely promotes them a lot more, which we're excited about. And people can also donate to contributors, which is a really cool feature. So if you like somebody's story and you want them to keep going, you can get on there and can donate. Kind of like, I guess Twitch does that. I don't know. My kid watches that.
Yeah, just Twitch.
But
No, there are a number of different sites. I mean, I think Twitch is one of them for gamers in a lot of cases,
yes,
where you're actually able to, again, support and donate to what they're doing. If it's because again, like in a lot of things, it's it's entertainment for people, or it's it's news, and so if you'd rather cut the cable bill and get some good local news, that might be a way to support a local news reporter.
yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to jump on here with me and talk a little bit more about MyPoint. It really seems like a cool concept, and as everything kind of tends to get more niche down and more hyper local, I can totally see where this is a really cool concept. I think for a lot of people's way to kind of consume news and information.
Yeah, thank you, Troy. Thanks for having me. And yeah, this is really exciting. Stick with us. It's definitely a ride, and if you want to see different kind of news, then we're definitely the place to go. So
it's also right.
exciting.
It's early enough too that it's people's chances to probably shape where
Absolutely.
things go, right? So you're not going to shape how ABC, NBC, and those channels do their news all that much. Where to actually have a chance to kind of shape how a news channel does things would be a pretty cool opportunity.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the news for the people. So yeah.
Very nice. Appreciate it. Hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Thank you.